We've been asked for some videos on piston pumps, and we're going to start with sort of the major do's and don'ts for a piston pump. A piston pump will have an electronic pressure controller in general, unless it's a mechanical type pressure control. They'll have a priming valve. They either open this way, some of them might be a ball valve type, or it circles off, but generally it's a lever that opens for priming. You will have an on-off switch. There will be a filter normally on the suction. There will be a filter on the canister. This one's not tight, but there's normally a filter in a canister on these machines. And inside the gun's handle, there's normally a filter. This is European style filter, and you can actually see the crud we've picked up in our workshop over the months of testing guns and things. That's why we have a filter in the gun. Piston lube is very important. Prevents paint from drying around the upper packings. So Greycar, for instance, call it TSL, throat seal lube. Titan calls it upper packing lubricant. We call it piston lube. And that's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to stop paint from curing around your seals. A chemical that keeps paint soft. Put on the upper packing, so against the piston. Most machines have a place on top by the pump to squeeze. A few drops is enough every time you use the machine. When you operate a paint machine, the first thing you want to do is use a thin liquid to prime the machine, and then you switch over to a thick liquid, which is easier for the machine to get the thick liquid in because you primed it with a thin liquid. So in this case, we have a priming valve. Valve is now open, so when I start pumping the pump, it will start pulling in the water and pushing it back out. So I'm priming the machine in a circle. Take the nozzle off when we're doing preparation, because I want to prime now the water through my gun. If it were paint, you'd prime the paint through. So I would switch this valve to closed, and then I would start pumping. I've primed it fully through the system. This valve closed, it can build pressure, so for safety, unless I'm spraying, I will reopen the valve just for safety, that we can't build pressure. We can put our nozzle on. We have multiple different settings for pressure on the machine, and the machine, when I set it to a specific pressure, it's going to wait for me and it's going to spray on demand. The pressure requirement changes based on the nozzle chosen and the paint chosen, and those combinations come with experience. We are going to show you just the simplest way to figure out what pressure you need for the nozzle you've chosen. To maximum pressure, and I've switched it off, which means as I spray now, the pressure will go from full to naught. And let's see how it sprays. It's going to start with heavy overspray. You'll notice all the overspray being created. As I spray more, the overspray gets less and less, to the point where we don't have enough pressure. These patterns, when painted, look the same. The downside of their very high pressure is lots of overspray. When your pressure is too low, you start getting these streaks, what we call tails. There's always a sweet spot between maximum and minimum for every paint with every nozzle chosen on every temperature and day. These machines, because they run on demand, do not like pumping fast continuously. This is how you damage these machines. The other thing about them, their seals get no cooling other than the product they're spraying, so they hate running dry. Do not pump your hose dry to get the water out your hose at the end of a day, because it means for the time you're doing that, you are running your machine dry. Very bad for the machine. I'm going to simulate an issue. You're on the roof, your paint tin is running dry. You don't have a helper down at the machine, and you're up on the roof. So you're happily painting at 100 bars, and now your paint tin goes empty. I've pulled it out the water now. Eventually, we will pull an airlock into the bottom of the pump. You hear that? Because you've set it and asked it for a certain pressure, it will try and give you that pressure, and it will continue pumping until you get down, switch it off, or reprime it. The main reason why most major repairs happen on these machines is continuously letting this happen to the piston pump. Especially smaller sized machines like this, on those smaller pumps, this is far more prevalent because of the speed the pump strokes. That is one of the major sins that happen to these piston pumps.